The market revolution essentially was a movement away from skilled workers and into the ways of mass production. This led to the expansion of opportunities for lower classes, and it gave them more freedom. This mindset was driven harder in the North than its complement, the South. As demand for products, which needed cotton, began to increase, the demand for slavery in the South also began to increase. So you have these two highly contrasting components of freedom and slavery, resulting in two different areas, which is going to overall increase the tension between the two. Masses grew closer and closer to religion, and through their religion, they developed a mindset that through this religious movement, they could better themselves, and in turn, they could better society. This led to the development of a group of people called reformers, who thought they should try and reform the U.S. Many different aspects of society that they attempted to reform, but one movement in particular that arose was the abolition movement. So essentially, they wanted to completely just get rid of slavery altogether immediately. So this abolition movement, it's the reformation to abolish slavery, it's growing. It's being proclaimed in the newspapers, urging the people to lean towards immediate emancipation of the slaves. There's dangerous rebellions breaking out within the South that are firing the slaves' desire for liberation. But the South is countering these attacks. They're tightening controls on the slaves, and they've passed the Fugitive Slave Act so that even if the slaves crossed into free territory, they had to come back and continue their laborious work. In the Harper's Ferry Rebellion, John Brown led 21 abolitionists to Harper's Ferry, to the arsenal, and started a slave uprising. John Brown was hanged, but not before he was able to give a motivational speech which fueled the North's desire to act against slavery. Essentially, his words were more powerful and more potent than those weapons could ever be. Now that the slaves are fighting for their freedom, other minorities feel that they deserve the same equality. For instance, women are fueled to fight for their rights. They attend several conventions, such as the one in Seneca Falls, New York, to protest the unfair treatment and demand equality. Sojourner Truth became the first black woman to protest both slavery and women's rights. There were several things that enlarged the gap between the North and the South, but the thing that pushed them over the edge was Lincoln's election. Lincoln said that he wasn't going to mess with slavery as it was, but he was going to abolish it. He was going to cut it off. There was going to be no more expansion in the way of slavery. The South did not even place Lincoln's name on their ballot, but yet he was still elected. This led them to believe that if they didn't have a government that was going to support them, they needed to get out. So this led into the movement of secession, and secession drew the boundary lines of who was going to be taking what side in the war. So had Lincoln immediately abolished slavery, it would have thrown the nation into a further divide. Thus, he deemed the war necessary. During the fighting outbreak, Lincoln classified the war as an insurrection. This is due to the fact that he would like to remain in power during the duration of fighting, and he was able to do this due to his executive position. 13th Amendment is absolutely vital to abolishing slavery, because it's illegal otherwise, due to the ruling that is made in the Dred Scott decision that stated that slaves are a property, and by abolishing slavery, you are denying people the right to property, which is a constitutional right. So therefore, Lincoln cannot legally free the slaves. That was the proclamation he made, another reason that makes this war necessary. Although the 13th Amendment passed and had allowed for slaves to be free, there was still a resulting discrimination between the blacks and whites. The South passed a series of laws called the Black Codes that had been adapted in the South after the amendment had been passed, condoning the treatment of blacks such that they are treated as legal slaves. The 14th and 15th Amendments, which were ratified to solidify citizenship and voting rights, and equality of all races led to violent outbreaks against blacks, such as the KKK. So this fast integration led to violent outbreaks. In order to solidify the Union as a whole again, there were several plans that were formulated in order to achieve this. Lincoln wanted to accept the South back into the Union for the sake of moving together again, while still favoring a moderately slow integration. In opposite terms, the radical Republicans wanted to punish the South for their holding of slaves and wanted immediate action to be taken towards integration. On the slower side of integration, Johnson, Abraham Lincoln's predecessor, he wanted to hold some people accountable, but mainly favored taking action with the states in charge. Through the way of fast integration, the Freedmen's Bureau was developed to assist colored people in their journey to equality. However, in the future, the Freedmen's Bureau contract would be rejected by Johnson. Now, because of the South's economy being completely trashed, it's just over. It was wiped out. They don't have a labor force to run their plantations. They result in tenant farming and sharecropping. But another way to assist them in moving up again, public work systems were developed.